74, I basically, towards the end of the year, cemented my spot in the first grade hooking role. 75, we obviously during those years of 72, certainly up until 75, Graham Langlands was the captain coach of the first grade side. I played with him in the 75 grand final. It's an extremely memorable grand final. It was 5-0 until half time, and then in the second half, well, they just came out and battered us.
After we won the under-18 grand final, a guy from South Newcastle rang my parents and asked me to come down to Newcastle to talk to South Newcastle with the anticipation of playing rugby league for them, because I hadn't been given a scholarship at Wollongong or Newcastle. I didn't really know which college I'd be going to. I was hoping to get enough marks in the HSC to get a scholarship. And when I was appointed, got the scholarship to Wollongong, it was a pretty tough decision to make, because my sister was actually studying music at the Conservatorium in Newcastle, so she was trying to get me to go to Newcastle. 3 of my mates got scholarships to Newcastle, but I decided against that. I thought, no, I'll make a clean break and go to Wollongong. So I left Werris Creek with my mother. We caught a train to Wollongong. We arrived at college on the Monday morning, went into the big auditorium, signed all the papers we had to sign, and then walked outside, and I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anyone. Not a soul in Wollongong. My mother knew only one person. But when I walked out of the college, they said, look, if you'd like to play rugby union for the college, sign up. So I actually signed up to play rugby union for Wollongong Teachers College. And from there, my mother and I got a bus out to Thirroul. We walked into Thirroul East Club, and Keith Nolan, who was then the secretary manager, by chance had gone to school. My mother, back up in Maitland, 30 or 40 years before, was walking out of the club. And he said, Gracie Coombs. Well, that was my mother's maiden name. That's how long since she'd seen him. And he said, what are you doing here? She said, well, Pete's got a scholarship to go to college. And Keith said, look, does he play football? And I said, yeah, he does. He said, well, if he plays football for us, I'll find him a place to live. Now, he didn't know I played football, but it's just that my father was a footballer, so away we went from there. So I joined up with Thirroul. I played 3 years with Thirroul, from 76, 77 and 78. Had a great time, went to college for the same period of time, mixed the study with the football, and came through with flying results.
What happened, I was playing baseball, and come winter time I had nothing to do, and a kid from up the road decided he'd go down to Guildford Leagues Club and trial for a rugby league side, and asked me if I'd like to go with him. So, of course I said yes, and went down there, and I stayed there with Guildford till I was 18 years of age. He only played 1 or 2 seasons and then he'd give it away, but I was there until I was 18, and I played some junior rep football, Jersey flag for Parramatta while I was at Guildford. And my last year for Guildford was in the C grade. We played in a semi-final, unfortunately got beaten, and I was asked to sit on the bench for the A grade final, and finished up starting in that final because one of the guys was out injured, and played in the centres, which I played majority of my football at Guildford as a centre, but the strange thing was I started as a 5'8", and of course when I went on to Parramatta, I finished my career as a 5'8", so I virtually started as a 5'8" and finished as a 5'8", in between played in the centres.
I remember my grandfather was just over the moon. I mean, he was over the moon. I was playing for St George because he'd been a staunch St George man since day one, and to be made captain of the first grade side, I mean, was a tremendous honour, and one that I treasured. And at the end of the day, I actually kept it for all of '76. I think in '76 we missed the finals, and then Chang retired as coach at the end of '76. Harry Bath came in 1977, so it was basically a new era.
I got a call from Len Stacker to find out our training times, and Len come down to East Mount Pritchard training and spoke to Eric and myself and our parents, and offered to for us to go and finish the season at Parramatta in the third grade. So that was 1977, and we went over and finished the season. I played my first game in 1977 in grade and broke my collarbone, and Eric spent that whole time there with me, and he played his first game in the semi-final.
After the finals in '77, I was offered a contract, $1,000 a year, which was big time for me. And from there, '78, my coach in under-23s was Ivor Lingard, and I was sort of up and down from 23s to reserve grade. And Ron Fernley was the coach in reserve grade, the brother of Terry Fernley. and it was just a great period of time because there was a lot of social activities going on there with the players, and we used to drink quite a bit after the games and so forth, and it was a lot of fun, and it was sort of laid back type attitude that we all had. We were intense when we played, but we were intense when we didn't play.
1977 was quite a successful year at school for us as footballers. At Kooringal High School, we not only did well in the University Shield, in fact we made the semi-finals there, ended up being knocked out by Ashcroft, who Paul Taylor, an ex-teammate, he was probably a star for Ashcroft in those days, but a lot of young players came through into grade football from their team. And we did very well in the Waratah Shield, which was the rugby union. We made the semi-finals in that as well. Got beaten 12-4 by Matraville, and these three particular individuals gave us enormous problems, and it wasn't until many years later that we realised that the Ella brothers were instrumental in knocking us out of that competition. So we look back with some pride that we did so well against that kind of opposition.
Chip, we're looking, Chip picked up by Mark Ella, can you get rid of it? Tackled on suspicion was Ramsey, was with Glenn Ella. Sliding back inside, still going, looking for support. Over the top to Mark Ella. Mark Ella moving towards the line, and on to Gary Ella. And Gary Ella comes down towards the post. Another Ella. They're everywhere.
It was also at the end of 1977 that the Parramatta Club came down officially with an approach to coming to Sydney. At that stage, I was a very, very staunch Manly supporter. The kind of supporter that if Manly got beaten on the weekends, I found it hard to go to school on a Monday. So I was maroon and white through and through, but Terry Fernley and Bob Jones from the club came down and had a chat, and I think two reasons I decided to come to Sydney was firstly because I saw an opportunity and thought, well, you could break your leg the following week and never be approached again. But maybe more importantly, it was the calibre of a guy like Terry Fernley who came down. I liked his demeanour, I liked his genuineness and his sincerity, and I knew that I'd be well looked after. And I think Terry Fernley in the long run was probably the main reason I did come down, because he assured me that I wouldn't be rushed, I would be well looked after, and that there was a future down here for me. And he was important early in my career, but he was extremely important in actually getting me from Wagga to come to the Parramatta Club.
Peter came into the Wagga Leagues Club and we sat down and talked to him for half an hour, and I thought, gee, this kid's got it. I don't know what it was about him. He'd played for the schoolboys, obviously had something going, but there's just an air about the lad, and I thought, well, we'll sign him up. And he was very anxious to come to Sydney and play for Parramatta. He respected our club. So he wanted to go back to school. He'd already got his HSC, but wanted to get a better pass in his HSC so he'd qualify for phys ed at uni. So I asked him what school would he like to go to, and he said, oh, he's fairly open about it. And I said, what about Fairfield Pats? Very good school, very supportive of Parramatta, and produced a lot of good players. So he said, love it. He'd love to go to Fairfield Pats. So when I got back to Sydney, I went across to see the boss over there, a fellow called Brother Angus, and a tough character. And it was just about, school wasn't that far away from starting, only a couple of weeks. So I sat down in the office with Brother Angus, and he sort of barely looked up, and I started talking to him about the club, and I said, I've got a boy who wants to come to school here. He didn't even bother looking up, and I thought, gee, well, I've got to handle this all right. So I said, he plays football. So, oh, does he? He looked up at me and said, oh, what position? I said, he's a 5'8". I said, his name's Peter Sterling. He said, I told him about him. He'd already passed his HSC, but wanted to get a better pass. I said, he played for state schoolboys last year, brother. He said, Terry, be most welcome.
I went to Fairfield Patrician Brothers for my first year in 1978 when I came to Sydney, which was quite a culture shock, being taught by blokes in frocks. That had never happened before. I'd gone to a co-educational school all my life, but it was a great year, and I got to mix with some quality people. The two men in charge there were a brother Christopher and a brother Angus, and they were fantastic. I wasn't always, I suppose, within the right guidelines and boundaries that they wanted, but they soon put me straight. But they did so in a good manner. I nearly missed a cup final of the AMCO Cup that year because I hadn't had an assignment in on time, and I realised that just because you could play football, it didn't mean that you got to play football unless you were up to date. So I learned some valuable lessons under some good people there, and we did quite well that year. We won the AMCO Shield, which was the schoolboy competition, which has now developed into Commonwealth Bank Cup and gone all the way through. And we beat Padua College in the semi-finals there, which is Paul Vorton's old school, and beat Ashcroft, who had been the nemesis the year before in Wagga. in the final of that.
I asked them at the end of the year, I saw Brother Angus at the end of the season, and they'd won the Amco Shield. Sterling was a star, and he played very well for us too. And I said to him, how did he go? He said, Terry, we loved him. He said, everyone loved him here. He said, but do you realise he used to run the SP at the school?
At my first training session with the Parramatta Club, I was ready to get back on the plane and go home. In Wagga, it was up and down the field passing the football, and we were doing 400-metre time trials here, and I was throwing up after every 200 metres. So it was, Wagga had never looked so good. So the football side of things at grade level took a little while to get used to, and I was struggling in a few areas. What made it a little bit easier was that my girlfriend from Wagga had actually moved up. Her parents were in the Air Force as well, had moved up to Richmond. So I used to spend as much time with her as I could as well. And that took some doing because I wasn't driving. I'd had to travel public transport, and I was living at Liverpool and travelling to Richmond, which was sort of 4-hour return trip. So I'd get to travel out there, see her for 10 minutes and then spend 4 hours on a train. But that made it a little bit easier. And the first year in Sydney, I played under 23s under the coach Ivor Lingard, who was a former English international, and the football was quite good, but I had to learn other things as well. And I actually stayed out at my girlfriend's one night on a Friday night and missed Saturday morning training. Turned up at the game at Brookvale. We were playing against Manly on the Sunday, and got changed, was ready to go out. I had friends and family who'd travelled a long way to come and watch that particular game. And as we were about to go on, Ivor took me aside and said, look, I'm not starting you, you're on the bench. And I was flabbergasted. This was the first I'd heard, but it was a good way of doing it because it really hit home. I was embarrassed. I didn't get to play at all that particular day, even though I sat on the sidelines for under 23s, reserve grade, and for first grade. And to have people come along and watch, or coming along to watch me and not get that opportunity, it's a lesson that stayed with me for a long, long time. I never missed training again. I made sure that I did everything right when it came to the football side of things. And I thank Ivor for that because it is something that was important to me for a long, long time. And maybe the embarrassment more than anything else was what stuck with me as well.
Well, Ray Price came into the side as captain. Then Ray was good value. He was perpetual motion. He knew how to win football. He would never give up. He's quite an amazing Price. So he's a great example for everyone too. I've seen him be injured, and you'd look at him on the Sunday evening after the game and think, well, he'll be out the following week, and he'd be there to train as good as anyone on the Tuesday. Work on his injuries, and was a great leader.
What about this praying mantis?
Well, the praying mantis situation I got in, it was come out of the rugby. I don't know if it made any difference. If the whole side had all put on the praying mantis, they'd all looked and gone to one side. Maybe the posts look like they're falling down the other way. I don't know, but that was Ray. But at least his hands were in the right position if the ball happened to come back. So that was something a little bit different. But that was a bit of a trademark for Ray.
1978 was a different thing altogether as far as the competition went. We were very slow in starting, whereas the previous 2 years we'd started off very well. It wasn't until the end of the season that we started to hit our straps again.
78 started, I got Sydney first and then New South Wales and then was picked to play for Australia. So yeah, it's starting off to be a good year. Parramatta are starting to put it together again.